Today, I'm going to show you guys the easiest mod you can do to your knife, and that's by swapping out its scales. This is a brand new series that I'm bringing to the channel, and I'm calling it Knife Mods, and this is episode 1. I'm going to start this new series with the Spyderco Shaman provided by House of Blades, today's video sponsor. Before we jump into the mod, let me tell you why I wanted to start this series in the first place. A lot of you guys enjoyed the video that I made on how to force patina copper and brass knife scales. I've been getting a lot of DMs and feedback of you guys just really appreciating that video, so I thought, why not in 2024 make more mod videos for you guys, whether it's swapping scales, hardware, pocket clips, how to remove anodization on knives, and maybe get into some finish mods on blades. So this is a brand new stock Spyderco Shaman that has nothing done to it except what came from the factory. Now in terms of the knife, this is actually one of my most favorite models that has come out of Spyderco, so that's why I chose this as our base platform. And what we're doing today is going to be super easy. You guys can literally follow along at home, and you can pretty much do this with any knife out there that has aftermarket scales. The ones that we'll be using today are these titanium scales provided by Flytanium. I've actually been holding onto these scales for a while now, and I'm excited to throw them onto the Shaman. So if we take a quick look at these scales, they're very simplistic. A lot of you guys are going to ask, why would I change out the scales on my knife? And it's due to the fact that this will actually change the entire profile of the knife in hand and aesthetically. Now the tools you'll need to do this are pretty simple. You can actually just pick up one of these WIHA sets off of Amazon, and then you'll need a couple different bits. I've got 2 T10 bits as well as a T8 and T6 Torx bit. I also just got into this really cool work mat or workbench if you want to call it that, and this is from Skyraider Knives. It's a single milled piece of aluminum along with some leather pads. It's got a bit organizer as well as these shelves, so that way I can throw in my KPL or any other miscellaneous parts. I'm not sure if these are for sale just yet because this is a prototype, but I'll try to leave a link in the description below when these do become available. Now in terms of my primary bit driver, this is from Good Screw. They are just really nice. They're super fun to fidget with, and this one is made of superconductor material. Before we move forward, let's give a quick word for today's sponsor. This video is brought to you by House of Blades, my go-to knife shop. And matter of fact, they were kind enough to send out this Spyderco Shaman for this series, so that way you guys can see a lot more mods done to different knives. And the cool thing about House of Blades is they have a ton of different options in terms of knife selection. They stock pretty much any brand that you can possibly imagine, anywhere from Benchmade, Civivi, WE knives, ZT, Chris Reeve knives, Koenig, and a whole lot of others. If you're interested in purchasing a knife from House of Blades, make sure that you use code EDM at checkout, and that will get you 10% off. I'll be leaving an affiliate link in the description below. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but if you want to help out the channel, definitely click on that link. And again, huge shout outs to House of Blades for sponsoring Everyday Minimalist, but let's get back to the video. So enough rambling about the gear, let's get into this mod and start off by getting this pivot out. Again, this is a T10 screw, but what I'm simply doing is backing out this pivot to see if we can just get that out real quick. And it looks like we don't even need that secondary one. I'll set this screw aside in this little screw holder, and then we'll move on to these 2 T8 screws holding in this backspacer. And we'll simply just untorque this specific screw here. This is going to be the top screw, so we'll set that aside, and then the lower bottom screw for the backspacer. Just back that out, and that should just fall right out of place. There we go, set that there. Now what's gonna happen is we should be able to take off this top scale and then reveal the entire locking mechanism. So here's a quick look between the stock scale and the Flytanium scale, and you'll notice that there's gonna be a curve here on the stock scale, whereas it's a straight edge on the Flytanium scale. Again, if you guys are interested in getting aftermarket scales, you can pick these up at houseofblades.com. The link will be in the description below. So let's continue taking this thing apart. Here is the liner with the compression lock. I'm going to set that off to the side, as well as the phosphor bronze washer and blade. Those should just fall right out, along with the stop pin. And now we're going to move on to the lock side scale. First off, let's start off with the pivot and get this screw out. And this is going to be the lock side pivot screw. There's also going to be a phosphor bronze washer as well as the pivot itself. So I'm going to put that to the side. Next, let's remove these 2 screws holding in that backspacer. So this should be relatively easy. And again, this is going to be a top side backspacer screw. So that will come right out. And then the bottom side backspacer screw. And that's going to be the bottom side. This is going to be the top side. All right. Backspacer removed. Let's put that to the side. And next is going to be the pocket clips. So I'm going to take a T6 Torx bit and remove these screws on this pocket clip. This is going to be relatively easy. That's exactly why you have a tray, so that way it catches your screws and that way you don't lose them.
Emotional, damn it!
Here's the last and third one, which is sandwiching the scale to the liner, and boom. Super, super easy. Now we're gonna get back to assembling it. Super simple. We literally just reverse the process. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this liner into this titanium scale. We're gonna take the pocket clip, line it up with the 3 screw holes, and essentially screw them back into place. Again, this is like one of the easiest mods that you guys can possibly do. Make sure that your scale is compatible with the knife that you're taking apart. For example, I actually had a Crew Carta PM2 that I tried to do a scale swap on. And the problem is with the Crew Carta PM2, it had a different scale in comparison to the aftermarket version. So there was a change in the liner itself to make it not fit. Fortunately, this one fits perfectly. Next, we have to line up the backspacer to these screws, and these are T8 screws, so I did have to swap in the T8 bit. Let's get this screwed on in. Super easy. And then the top one, let's do that again. Now in a future video, I will be swapping out the hardware along with the pocket clip just because I don't really like this clip at all. Next up is the pivot. So what I'm gonna do real quick is take my hank and essentially wipe off any of that residue from wear and stuff like that and just make this washer super clean. Next, I'm gonna sandwich it in between the scale and the pivot. And if you'll notice on the pivot, there is gonna be a really small flat side that you're gonna wanna line up to the liner so that way the pivot doesn't free spin. We'll take this T10 pivot screw and essentially just screw it back into place. This should be relatively easy as well. Now we don't want to over tighten that just yet because we'll adjust those tolerances here in a bit. Let's take the stop pin and place that back in there. And now what we can do is take the phosphor bronze washer off of the blade, give this one a small cleanup as well as the blade itself. So that way it's nice and clean. And this is something that you guys don't have to do, but I'll take a small tiny bit of KPL or knife pivot lube and just dab it on top of the lock side washer. We'll put the blade back on, and then on the blade side, I'm gonna go ahead and do a small tiny bit of KPL as well. And now we can put on that clean washer and bam. Now the next thing I'm gonna do is take the compression lock or liner and throw it into the scale and then essentially line everything up so it all fits together really well. Once that's lined up, I'll go ahead and screw in these T8 screws once again and make sure that they are nice and snug. Boom. And boom. All right. Last but not least, to button this up, we're gonna throw in that pivot screw and just get this really nice. Now let's clean up a little bit so that way we stay organized. I don't like to lose bits or anything like that, so we're just gonna put everything back in place. Everything except the T10 bits. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and test fire this thing and see what needs to be adjusted. And to check the tolerances, you're gonna wanna take a look at the blade and make sure that it's centered on the scales themselves. If they aren't, then what you can do is just play around with the pivot to make sure that everything is snug. Okay, maybe a little bit less on this side. Go. And there you guys go, a complete scale swap shaman. This thing feels completely different now, and it's quite a bit heavier just because it is titanium. Now the last thing I wanted to mention, if you don't plan on taking apart your knife a ton, then grab some blue Loctite, do a small tiny dab on one of those pivot screws or on both, and then screw in the knife. Don't use the knife for about 24 to 48 hours. Let that curate a little bit, and then you won't have issues with your screws backing out. But there she is, the shaman upgraded with titanium scales. It feels amazing. It's a little bit heavier than before, but it completely changes the entire knife. Again, this is just episode 1, so stay tuned. We'll be doing more episodes every single month, whether it's upgrading hardware, a pocket clip, if we're going to do a completely different finish on a scale set or blade. Make sure that you guys have those notification bells turned on, and also let me know what you guys would like to see next in terms of a mod in the comment section below. I'd love to read through those. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I guess we'll have to catch you on the next one. Peace out.